Hi everybody, welcome to FNS Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, back to talk about episode 514 of Ring of Honor Television. I think it aired on July 23rd. If you're a new listener, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. A little bit late getting this podcast out today. It is my son Jackson's, well, it's his 14th birthday tomorrow, but he had his party today. He had 3 friends over to swim for a little bit and eat a bunch of junk food and pizza and whatnot. So I was just out hanging out with him, so I'm a little late getting down here. He is usually my co-host on our Saturday main show, if you've never listened to it, where we talk about AEW Dynamite and NXT and Impact Wrestling, and he usually chooses a match for us to review and talk about as well. But as I always say at the beginning of this, he's not really into ROH right now. He may find the time at some point, but he consumes a lot of wrestling already, so ROH is one he sort of lets slip through the cracks. But not me. I watch it every week. I usually enjoy it, so I sit down and talk about it with you. And I don't really have much else to say in this opening little bit of banter that I always start with, so I figure why don't we get into talking about this week's Ring of Honor. So I say we do that now. Sorry, I hope you don't mind the cat sound effect there. Just trying to add something different every week as my little transition from my opening talk until that. So this week we went with a cat for some reason. So hope you're a cat person. I am. I own a cat. I like dogs as well, but I really like cats. It's a long story. I know there's not many of you that prefer cats, but I kind of do, although dogs are cool too. But anyways, that's not what we're here for. Let's start talking about Ring of Honor. So the show starts with a recap of the finish of the Mandy Leon Quinn McKay match from last week, where Mandy was basically tapping out to, I think, what they're calling the Tangerine Dream, looks like the $1 Million Dream. But Angelina Love, the other part of the Allure group, I guess, distracted the referee and then quickly followed up by handing Mandy Leon brass knuckles, which she used to hit Quinn McKay and then win the match, obviously. So we get a post-match interview from that last week, where Mandy Leon sort of takes exception to the match being described by the interviewer. I didn't catch his name, I apologize. He describes it as a hard-fought battle, and Mandy Leon takes exception to this because Quinn is just a rookie who should be embarrassed because Quinn has now blown 2 chances to get into the women's tournament. She has lost to both members of Allure now, so Angelina Love and Mandy Leon on separate occasions. So they basically say that Quinn is done and walk away from their interview. So again, I think these two do really good jobs in their roles of like the stuck up mean girls, right? Like, sure, this isn't a very unique character or gimmick, I guess, but they do it really well. And Quinn, like I talked about last week, she cut a fantastic babyface promo. So she is a really strong babyface, at least character-wise. In the ring, she needs a lot of development, I think, but that's okay. I think she probably will work really hard and improve really quickly. So this is a really strong babyface for these 2 heels to work off of for this storyline. I still think there's a chance Quinn somehow ends up in the tournament, but then they're showing us the bracket throughout this show, so I guess I'm wrong. It just kind of felt like that to me, like she still might find a way in and maybe pick up a win, get a win back against Love or Leon or both. So either way, I don't feel like these guys are necessarily done with each other, but again, I could be completely wrong. I just feel maybe there's some way that Quinn will work her way into the tournament, whether there's an injury or someone gets attacked or something. But I mean, it could just be that that's it. That's the end of these Quinn dealing with these 2. I'm not sure. It feels like it's not, but I guess we'll find out going forward. And then Quinn is back at her desk to start the show as she is most weeks. Although Brian Johnson sort of filled in for her last week, which I enjoyed for the most part, because I am a big fan of Brian Johnson. But it's Quinn back. She says that she's going to keep it short this week because she's still feeling the effects of being hit in the head with brass knuckles by Mandy Leon last week. She mentions that she did, in fact, she looks a little sad. She's missed her chance to get into the women's tournament, and that tournament, though, will start next week on Ring of Honor Television. So that's cool. I'm looking forward to that. I am a sucker for a good tournament, especially if it introduces some new participants, some new competition into the company, whether it be just for a one-off or a little longer term. Doesn't matter to me. I just like to see new talent in new combinations and things. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Today, then, she moves on to tell us that we're going to get 3 big matches on the show. The main event will be Eli Isom versus Dak Draper versus Dalton Castle in a triple threat match, with the story being they were briefly formed a team to take on Shane Taylor Promotions at Best in the World, But obviously, there was a breakdown in that briefly formed team during that match, and they've gone their separate ways and are going to, settle it, I guess, in a match here tonight. But we're also going to see PCO take on Sledge with Danhausen on commentary. And first, we're going to see Flip Gordon go against the world-famous CB, and that match, they tell us, will happen now. And it does. So it is Flip Gordon versus the world-famous CB. So Marvez is trying to interview Flip Gordon backstage as he's doing like handstands or handstand push-ups or something on some folding chairs. But Gordon tells Marvez he has nothing to say until he gets his Ring of Honor title shot. So it was pretty much a one-line promo, which is going to be a recurring theme as I talk about this show tonight. But so I don't know what to really say, right? He said like 14 syllables or something. I may be completely wrong, but it wasn't a lot regardless. The handstand on the folding chairs was impressive, but hard to evaluate a promo when it's basically one line. World famous CB then gets his chance to speak. He says he took a while to find himself, but now he sees Flip Gordon try to be something different every week. A high flyer, a technician, a brawler. CB says he's going to do Flip a favor and tap him out like everyone else. So I thought this was fine, but again, CB at this point is basically enhancement talent, right? And he's facing a guy that has the very next title shot for the Ring of Honor Championship. So, to be fair, Flip did just lose to EC3 on, I think it was Best in the World, the last pay-per-view. But I still don't think this match is much in doubt, right? So there's not really a story leading up to this. They're just kind of thrown together. They both cut really, really brief, acceptable promos. I think CB makes a bit of a point about Flip changing his style a few times in the last little while. But other than that, it was pretty standard stuff here. And as we head into this match, I'm not really a fan of either of these guys, if I'm being honest. I think Flip is really talented in the ring, but there's something he just doesn't connect with me storyline character-wise. And world famous CB, I just don't see him as a viable threat at this point, the way he's been booked lately. He's presented as basically an undercard talent at the moment. And that's not an insult that every company needs people of all levels, right? So, but it's just the way he's positioned right now is he's not really a threat, I don't think. So this match starts, we get lots of mat work with holds and counters to start. Then it transitions to a bit of rope running and some standing holds and counters from these two. CB works Flip's arm and fingers from a couple different positions. Then we get a boot from Flip that sends CB to the floor. German suplex on the floor by Flip Gordon. And I noticed there's lots of talks of people's singular, of people's physiques by commentary. They always feel like they're sort of compelled to discuss how skinny CB is for some reason and how he's put on 20 pounds and he's got this unique physique. And they're not making fun of him. They're kind of talking about how he can use it to his advantage. But I still notice every time they can't help themselves from pointing out how thin he really is and how he doesn't weigh a lot. Anyways, just something I've noticed. It doesn't, neither here nor there, I guess. I don't know if it's good or bad. It's just kind of an observation, I guess. But back outside the ring, world famous CB's dumped over the barricade, hit with a double axe handle by Flip. So it kind of made me laugh because Flip Gordon is capable of all kinds of high risk, impressive stuff. And he's going for the double axe handle, right? So he's really kind of embracing this. He's a heel character, so he's no longer doing the high flying stuff, which I do kind of appreciate. But I didn't think he did a lot of other types of offense in this match particularly. CB comes back with a single arm bulldog, a super kick before applying a Kimura. So Gordon eventually powers out of the Kimura, runs CB into the corner, into the turnbuckles. He then hits a Kinder Surprise, which is where he's kind of jumps up, stands on the top rope for a second and kicks the guy in the face. Then hits a flipping fallaway slam that was pretty impressive. Applies an STF and CB taps out after about 8 minutes of action. So I honestly didn't think this was a great match. CB doesn't really do anything for me. Flip didn't do that much. And there was really no story coming into this. It was a CB working the arm a lot. Flip didn't really hit a lot of impressive offense. A little bit at the end, but nothing wrong with this match. I guess a decent match between two guys I don't personally care too much about at this point. Again, just the way especially CB's been presented. Flip has a title shot, but he's not even looking like too viable a contender right now, just the way he's been presented. Again, losing on a pay-per-view and then having sort of a competitive match with CB here where CB was in control a lot. I don't feel like they're booking Flip super strong, so I don't imagine he's any threat to Bandito and his championship. So I thought this match for an opener, it wasn't great, but it wasn't offensive or anything as we get trapped into saying a lot here on the FNS podcast. It was fine, right? We then get Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman at commentary. So they're basically the bouncers just kind of show up, and Mike Malonis grabs a headset. So it's the bouncers with Ken Dixon, who is sort of affiliated with them now out of the ROH dojo, I guess it is. So Malonis grabs the headset, tells commentary that commentary should be done, and he rhymes off a bunch of other teams and things, and that they should be done talking about everyone else and should be talking about the bouncers and Ken Dixon. He then goes on to say that they're putting other teams on notice and will win the 6-man tag championships and the tag team championships. That is their plan. I actually thought this was pretty good intensity by Malonis in this promo, and the group did look kind of intimidating. These are some big dudes kind of standing behind the commentary team who are a little bit helpless and just at the mercy of these guys. For me, I'm always the new guy. The guy that I don't know much about is who I'm interested in. So I'm most intrigued by Dixon, to be honest, of this unit, just because we know what we're going to get from the bouncers at this point, right? I don't see these guys as a threat either. But again, the division, the tag team, the 6-man tag, we've got to sort of fill out that division with guys of all levels, right? So I think there's room for these guys in both of these divisions. But I mean, I don't think they're being presented as top quality competitors at this point, but who knows where they could go. So I thought this was okay. They were an intimidating group. It was, again, a really quick promo from Malonis, and the other two just kind of stood there. So the same interviewer, whose name I didn't catch, I apologize, he tries to talk to Flip Gordon again now that he's won his match against world famous CB, but Flip again says he won't say anything until he gets his title shot. So that was another, I don't have much to say about that. It was basically the same thing he said before. He's not talking to us until he gets a shot, so that's fine. We then get a quick look at the bracket for the women's tournament. I'm not going to go over it. If you want to, I'm sure you can pull up an image somewhere and take a look at it. Then they transition directly into Sledge's entrance as he's about to take on PCO in the middle match on this show. So he gets an inset promo as he's coming out, talks about PCO, basically says that when someone runs on electricity like PCO, you ground him. So, I mean, kind of, I didn't think that was a great line, to be honest. But anyways, and another super brief promo. It seems like that's the style on this show this week. PCO then comes out next. He gets an inset promo with Danhausen standing in the background. PCO says it's coming around the corner and basically Sledge will rest in hell. So again, neither of these promos were anything more than a couple sentences, and it's really reminding me of, like, I'm old enough to remember seeing them live, the old 80s promos, right? Where it's two guys who maybe don't even have any story or any background together, and they just cut like a little quick promo before the match starts, and that's all you get. So that's what it feels like we're getting tonight, which part of me likes because it's a little bit retro, but also they're not really offering us very much in terms of promos on this show. I would say Malonis's little rant at commentary, and then Draper gets a bit to say coming up, and those are the two main ones of the show, other than Quinn getting to speak about her sort of dealings with Allure at the beginning of the show. So interesting, really, really brief promos on this show this week. We then get the match, which is Sledge and PCO. Danhausen's on commentary. I didn't notice him saying anything notable. I also, full disclosure, I'm not a huge Danhausen fan. I do see why people like him. I think he offers something really different and quirky and neat. It just doesn't hit with me, but I totally understand that why a lot of people really do enjoy him, and I don't fault them for that. It's just not my cup of tea. So it could have been that I wasn't really listening to him too closely, or that I'm biased because I don't find him that humorous, but I didn't pick up anything super amazing that he said. But again, that might be just me. I might read after I do this that people loved it and thought he was amazing, but I didn't pick up on anything that was exceptional. We get a nice running boot to PCO, who is seated in the corner kind of early on in this by Sledge. There's a chop exchange and then a Russian leg sweep and a falling headbutt by PCO. PCO stays in control after that for a while, but then eventually there's a body slam and a standing elbow drop by Sledge. An impressive overhead suplex by Sledge, as PCO's a really big guy, and I don't know how much he's helping you anymore at his advanced age and athleticism. Sledge gets shoved to the floor. PCO hits his cannonball through the ropes. He also then hits a top rope senton to Sledge on the apron, which always looks painful. PCO then is sitting on the barricade outside a little bit later for some reason, and Sledge just boots him to the floor. They start brawling on the floor, and basically the ref calls for the bell as neither man will stop. Security comes to break things up, and this officially ends in a double disqualification after about 9 minutes. Now, I'm afraid I may be saying something that's not a very popular opinion. I'm not actually sure how people feel about him, but I'm not sure I need to continually see 53-year-old like kind of barely hitting his high risk offense at this point, and then a combination between that and like no selling the offense of the other guy at times when he gets to do his whatever it is, his glitching or his malfunctioning, I think they call it. Is he impressive for a man over 50? Of course he is. Does that mean that I want to keep seeing him in matches? Unfortunately not. I don't. I am, on the other hand, somewhat intrigued by Sledge. He seems to be a decent big man that I haven't seen much of before. So again, I love new talent, at least new to me, right? He may not be new, but new to me. And I just don't know if he's going to get the best showcase against PCO, because PCO doesn't move around too well. He's a little bit limited. It was a lot of PCO hitting really basic offense, just like running into him and corner offense before hitting his couple big spots, right? Like there's always going to be either a moonsault or a senton or a dive through the ropes, which always looks scary, and he hits them and he's fine, but it honestly looks like he's just like an eyelash away from really hurting himself or maybe somebody else. So I'm not a huge fan of it, but Sledge did a little bit more than PCO in this match, and I thought he looked good at times, but I don't think the match as a whole was very good. I would call it a mediocre slugfest would be my definition of it, I think. Again, I don't know how much more I need of PCO, and I don't know how popular he is, and it's unfortunate, but it's just not, there's younger guys who haven't had these lengthy careers, and I respect PCO's career for sure, but I would much prefer to see some younger, less experienced talent. Then we get Sledge. He gets a post-match interview here briefly. He says he just hung with the former world champion, and he's not done with PCO yet. So honestly, another like 2-sentence promo, not much I can say about it. It was fine. It lets us know that this is in fact going to continue, which I figured it would from a double DQ. So again, it'll probably get a rematch of this that I don't know if I want to see, but hopefully, and maybe that's what it was. PCO knows they're going to have another match, so he wasn't pulling out all the stops here, right? So that could definitely be the explanation. This feud's going to continue. PCO's sort of saving something for the next encounter. So that might be the case, to be fair. They then put up the women's tournament bracket again really quickly before shifting to the main event. And the main event is a triple threat match between, is triple threat WWE language? I can't remember if that's what Ring of Honor calls it. Whatever they call it. I'm going to call it a triple threat between Dak Draper, Eli Isom, and Dalton Castle. So again, there was a tournament not long ago where Eli Isom faced Dak Draper. I believe Isom won. Castle was there scouting both of them, I think, as they were competing. And then somehow they just magically formed a team to face Shane Taylor Promotions, right, for the 6-man tag titles at Best in the World. And that tag team quickly fell apart in the match. At one point, I remember Isom and Castle both climbing the ropes and debating who was going to hit a move. And I think Castle ended up pushing Isom off, if I remember. My memory's not the best, but it was something like that. Things broke down, the team malfunctioned, and they ended up losing. The team dissolved, and this is basically the aftermath of that, the three of them facing off. So all three of them get a brief promo before the match starts. Draper's promo, he talks about all the other guys in this company chasing honor and competition and respect and not really worrying about championships and attention. And he says he's not one of those guys. He's all about titles and prestige and attention. And he tried it as a team with these guys, trying to get gold basically by getting those belts, but it all fell apart. And he blames Eli and Dalton Castle equally, and he's going to make them pay. So he got a little more time than everybody else on this show, basically, and you can see why. He's a very confident speaker, a really good delivery, and a really believable, arrogant heel. In ring, I'm not the hugest fan. I think he's definitely good, and maybe it's just me, but I think his strength is his promos, and this was a pretty good, albeit very brief again, but longer than the other ones, but a good promo. Eli Isom speaks next. He says he should have known that the other two would have tried something at Best in the World. The other two even showed up with matching gear at that show, and Isom never got that memo. He will show them he won't be made a fool of, and that's a promise, because that's sort of his thing, is promises, and I believe his finishing brainbuster is called The Promise as well. A quick promo, decent intensity. I honestly see a lot of potential in Eli Isom, and the more I see of him, the more I want to see more. I just think he is really good. He's got a lot of skill in a lot of areas, and I think he's somebody Ring of Honor can sort of hang their hat on. He's one of their guys because I don't really know him from anywhere else, and I think he's got a lot of potential going forward. Dalton gets his turn to speak, obviously. He puts the blame on Isom and Draper, what a surprise, for screwing everything up. He says the Hollywood foreign press, which is a kind of a funny phrase, right? Because Hollywood is not in another country. It is, in fact, in their country. So I don't know the Hollywood foreign press, but that's Dalton Castle. He's a quirky fellow. There, he says that press will take notice. He signals his boys, and they basically walk off camera. I like Dalton Castle's quirky style and his just sort of strange delivery and the strange character he's sort of created. But again, a super short promo, but it was fine. Castle, as this match starts, he races to the ring and basically attacks right away. And it's a fast start in general. Isom, not too far in, hits a really nice dive over the top rope to the outside. There's then a running knee to Isom by Castle as Isom is being held by Dak Draper up against the barricade. And then he puts Isom in the ring, hits another knee in the corner. A little bit later, Draper sends Castle into the ring post so that Castle's taken out. We get some time with just Draper and Isom in the ring. Isom hits a Northern Light suplex to Draper, then a straight jacket suplex to Castle that I thought was a pretty cool sequence. Draper power slams Isom, but then gets hit immediately by a suplex from Dalton Castle. We get a drop kick by Isom to Castle, who's seated on the top rope. Impressive leap. It's kind of like Moose does in Impact Wrestling. And then a back suplex by Isom to follow up. Castle and Draper at one point argue on the outside of the ring, and Draper just finally picks up Castle and dumps him over the barricade. Then we get in the ring and a spinning side suplex by Isom to Draper for a 2 count. Draper gets drop kicked off the apron by Isom, who then hits a moonsault to the floor and onto Draper. That was pretty nice. Castle then, sort of out of nowhere, he gets Isom's attention by making a little bit of noise. Isom turns around. Castle throws a chair directly into Isom's face, rolls Isom in the ring, and then you can hear Dalton Castle clearly telling Dak Draper, now do something big. This is our moment. So he's basically somehow considering giving Draper the win, it looks like, and that he's considering it part of his win as well somehow. But again, that's Dalton Castle. We never really understand what he's doing. So Draper does hit his Magnum drop finisher as all of Dalton Castle's boys are standing on the apron in the background facing the hard camera, sort of flexing. So Draper picks up the win. Dalton Castle at this point is acting like he sort of won the match as well, but we quickly hear him say what he's been saying a lot lately, that he's too busy, and he leaves in a hurry as Draper sort of briefly celebrates in the ring. Then Draper acts like he's going to do what one of his heel gimmicks is, which is give his opponents after a loss a participant ribbon, but he throws it away and then actually quickly shakes Eli Isom's hand as Isom's still lying on the mat, and commentary are sort of wondering if we're seeing a change in Dak Draper as the show comes to a close for the week. This match, there wasn't a ton of story behind it, but there was at least a little bit of something, right? They formed a team for one show. I actually like this match. And kind of a lot didn't happen in the first 2 matches. There wasn't really much to grab your attention. These guys, I thought, made up for it pretty much. There was a lot of cool stuff in this, especially I thought from Eli Isom. He looks really impressive to me. He just seems to be able to do a lot of different things. He can do high flying stuff. He's powerful. And I'm a sucker for a guy that can nail a variety of suplexes. I don't know what it is. If you can just throw in 4 or 5 different suplexes in a match, I'll be happy. And he does that. He mixes up a lot of different suplexes, so I quite like that. I also like Dalton Castle's strange behavior and never really understanding what his motivation is or why he's doing things. So I wonder a bit going forward what the relationship is between he and Dak Draper, because clearly Castle thinks something is there, right? Saying that basically this is their big chance together and treating it like he won the match as well somehow. So I kind of find that interesting to see, because I don't imagine Draper feels that they have any sort of relationship, and Castle clearly does. So that's a little bit of intrigue, I guess, going forward. So I thought this was a good main event, but like the rest of this show, from pretty much top to bottom, it lacked star power, right? This is one of those episodes where there's not a lot of star power. Like, sure, Flip Gordon, I guess, is your number 1 contender and has a title match, but I don't consider him a top star in this company at this point. No offense to him. So that would be one of my criticisms of this show, was just a lack of star power. So let's talk about it overall, what I thought of it. you can probably tell I wouldn't consider this a very strong episode of Ring of Honor. It was really in-ring focused, this show, and I didn't really like 2 of the 3 matches, right? So that kind of hurts it, obviously. I did enjoy the main event. Segment-wise, the show didn't really have any, I would argue, almost, other than the Bouncers and Ken Dixon sort of invading commentary for a minute. Everything else was basically like a 30-second promo. Draper might have gotten a minute. Quinn speaking at the beginning was probably one of the longer speaking segment on the show. So I feel like this show was about a C+ for me. It was one good match and that's it. And again, I'm going to sort of pick on them a little bit, and maybe it's nothing they can help. But where are the champions of this company on your weekly TV show? Especially, in my opinion, Bandito. Like, somehow ROH can go weeks without mentioning him or other champions. It's got to be an issue of them only having 1 hour of TV a week. And I understand that. But if it were me, I would probably eliminate the virtually meaningless 30-second promos by most of the guys on this show and include a 2-minute vignette. Take those 30 seconds, add them up, and use that to do some sort of vignette focusing on one of your champions. I would prefer Bandito because A, I think he's awesome. B, he's your newly crowned like champion of the company, right? So I would try and find time to squeeze something in, like what he's doing with the belt. Maybe he's taking it back to Mexico and showing people, whatever. And just something to remind me he's a champion. Here's what he's doing. Here's a bit of character build for him. So I don't think this episode was Ring of Honor's best work, obviously, but the main event was good. I wouldn't say you like need to drop everything and go out and see it, but I do think it was an enjoyable match. So a C+ show, which is definitely below average. Pretty much for me, A range is really, really strong. B range is good. C range is like, there was probably something decent on there, but overall the show was not great. A little bit of a chore this week, but nothing terrible. So I think that's going to bring us to the end of this episode of reviewing Ring of Honor. I really just want to take a minute to thank some people. It's getting a few likes and things from people, so I know a few people are actually listening to it, which is great, because honestly, we obviously don't get a ton of listens at this point. We're really terrible at promoting ourselves, and we're just started out as a hobby, and now we just enjoy doing it. So if you could help us out, tell somebody you know, make a post somewhere about, hey, I listened to this and it's not bad, check it out. Would be really appreciated. I love any feedback. Even just people liking it is meaningful to me. Just lets me know there's people out there that are listening and liking it, so I really do appreciate it. We'll have our flagship show on Saturday coming up, episode 54, where again we'll talk about AEW Dynamite, NXT, Impact Wrestling, some wrestling trivia, a lot of talk of wrestling action figures. That's our final segment. My son loves wrestling action figures and new releases and stuff he loves to talk about. So if you have any more time in your week to listen to myself and my son talk about wrestling, that would be great. That will come out on Saturday, usually somewhere around dinner time. So if you could check that out, like, subscribe, whatever, comment, give us some feedback, that would be amazing. I always respond to any feedback we get. So hopefully we will see you all back here for episode 54 on Saturday. And until then, take care.